I think that the lifestyle of the monk is a lifestyle of a monk, and the lifestyle of a uh, the lifestyle of a layperson is the lifestyle of a layperson. And the Buddha's insight could appear to one in the
Tony, you just muted yourself.
I unmuted myself. How long ago did I unmute myself? I have no idea why that happened. Oh, I see why it happened. I put something on my keyboard and it pressed the space bar. Sorry. Um, if the Buddha's insight appeared in the mind of someone living a lay life, I know that the monastic line is that you've got. I think Powok said we had 48 hours. If you renounced the life and had the insight, you would have 48 hours to become a monk, to get to a monastery. I'm not quite sure what would happen if you didn't, but the idea was that only as a monk could one live the awakened life. Somehow that's a notion. But I'm not so sure that that's the case. And so this is a situation where the Buddha is talking about how a layperson would live an awakened life. And one of the things that makes this important, I think you guys know Rick Maddock, I guess, and he's been up and talked with you. He's a neuroscientist. He's in my group in Davis, and boy, he's taught me a lot. One of the things he taught me is that knowledge or understanding isn't necessarily always capable of being articulated, certainly conceptually. And yet it's no less knowledge. So, for example, how to ride a bike. You know how to ride a bike, but can you tell me how to ride a bike? Can you explain to me how to ride a bike? In the same way you could explain to me how to cook a hamburger, or even how to grow radishes. You could give me instruction. But how to ride a bike, you put a kid on a bike and you give him a shove. Knee pads now and a helmet now probably, but it's knowledge, it's understanding that's held in the body. And he calls it implicit understanding. And there are a lot of implicit understandings in our life besides riding a bike. I mean, really, how do you know? And they're hybrids here. So how do you know how to hit a ball over the tennis net and get it in the court on the other side? I was never able to do that. I spent an afternoon trying, and I never actually made it successfully. But that's when you know that, you learn that. That's implicit knowledge in your body. Naomi Osaka does not think about how to hold the racket. She's thinking strategy. She's thinking about her opponent. All the rest is all implicit. It's all programmed in. And I think that in an important way, the Dharma itself is like that. The understanding of the Dharma is implicit. Full understanding. The Buddha said, what is full understanding? He said it's the absence of greed, hatred, and delusion. Which isn't the same as saying, I understand impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self. He's saying that the articulation of the Dharma occurs in an intention. The articulation of the Dharma, the articulation of right understanding, appears in speech, action, and livelihood. So it's not some abstract thing. I know a lot of the Dharma teaching, we focus on things like the two truths or the four truths or the seven factors or this or that, and lots of conceptual stuff. Um, but I think that in the end, this is the understanding of the Dharma is articulated in behavior. It's one of the reasons why, I've heard that line about in relation to Dharma teachers who've come up short on the ethics department. Is that a kind way to say it? Um, People say, well, it's perfect teacher, perfect teaching, imperfect teacher. And I've never been comfortable with that, because the idea of a perfect teaching is just a concept. How do you articulate a perfect understanding? The person who is teaching articulates their understanding in their behavior, in their speech, their action, their livelihood, their thought. So the articulation of the Dharma shows up in behavior. And that's where we come to Digha Nikaya 31. So the story in this sutta, it's a long sutta towards the end of the Digha Nikaya. The Buddha comes across this guy named Sigala, and he's making ablutions. He's doing ritual splashing water or whatever, and Buddha watches him for a while and says, "What's the deal?" He said it in Pali, though, actually. And Sigala explains that when his father was dying, his father made him promise to worship in the six directions. And so I'm worshiping in the six directions. So the Buddha basically is giving instructions for worshiping in the six directions. And it's a long sutta, and he begins with talk about the precepts and ethical behavior. And then he comes to this metaphor of the six directions. And I'm gonna give you maybe a way to hold this. I don't think the Buddha had in mind the temples of the Masons or the Rosicrucians, but the Western occult tradition built their temples based on north, south, east, and west. And usually the way one was positioned in here, one would stand in the center and face the south, where the sun was highest. And the west would be to your left, the east would be to your left, the west would be to your right, the north behind you, and then above and below would be the six directions. And the Buddha used these six directions to talk about this, what he created as the six fundamental relationships. And really, it's the relationship to the social cosmos, to all aspects of our social interaction. And so this sutta is an articulation of the Dharma in terms of our relationships to others. And there's an important element here, because I just don't think there's another spiritual tradition of this age which makes reciprocity the primary element. So it's not just your relationship to the East, it's the East's relationship to you. And so the idea is here that one treats all these elements, these different directions, with respect, and they respond to you with compassion. And in each, so let me just put this document up, and let me see here. Whoops. So what I'm going to do is to read the beginning of it. Can you all see it? Everybody can see it now? Okay. So this is the conversation from the Buddha. This is John Kelly's translation. It's on Sutta Central. And how, young man, does the noble disciple protect the 6 directions? These 6 directions should be known. Mother and father as the east. So you're standing facing south. I find this helpful for me in remembering. Mother and father to our left, to the east. Teachers as the south. The teachers, your teachers, stand in front of you. Spouse and family as the west, to your right. Friends and colleagues to the north. They will be behind you. They've got your back, is how I think of it. Workers and servants in the lower direction, and ascetics and Brahmins in the upper direction. So now he goes through each of these relationships and talks about the reciprocal forms of kindness, really, that exist between them. And he has 5 examples of each of these, 5 different ways. So these, are they precepts? Are they social precepts? Let's just read through the first. He says, in 5 ways should a mother and father as the eastern direction be respected by a child. Again, it's respected. And I would say this is not to be, none of these things are to be taken literally. We're trying to get the sense of what the Buddha was talking about. So perhaps you didn't grow up in a household with a mother and a father. But it was the people. It could have been a grandmother or an aunt or someone who nurtured you. So in these 5 ways should a mother and father be respected. I will support them who supported me. And we'll see how they're supposed to support you in the next paragraph. I will do my duty to them. These are not particular things that, the word is vague. You know the debt that you owe. I will maintain the family lineage and tradition. That's a matter of, it's a matter of being respectful, certainly. And maybe you've got a family for whom the lineage is not to be respected. Maybe you're, oh my gosh, I had the thought, maybe you're poor Baron Trump. I didn't say that. You're not recording that, are you? I will be worthy of my inheritance. Worthy is not a precision term. And I will make donations on behalf of dead ancestors. That's just a donation, support, remembering, recollecting your origins, where you came from. And the mother and father so respected will reciprocate with compassion in 5 ways. By restraining you from wrongdoing, guiding you towards good actions, training you in a profession, supporting the choice of a suitable spouse, and in due time handing over the inheritance. So this is a reciprocal relationship of respect and compassion. And for us standing in the middle of, when we're standing in the middle of this matrix, what we, our posture, the Buddha says, is to be respectful. And when you're playing the role of the parent, addressing someone who would be in the center, the response would be compassion, caring. How do you cultivate compassion? There are a number of different ideas about this. Some people have you recite phrases and remind yourself. But my suggestion is that you look for the suffering, because when you find the suffering, the compassion will automatically show up. So the mother and father respond, or the guardian, or the caregiver responds with compassion. attending to the suffering of the one in the middle. In this way, the eastern direction is protected and made peaceful and secure. In 5 ways should teachers, as the southern direction, be respected by the student. By rising for them, by appearing for them, by showing up, by regularly attending lessons, eagerly desiring to learn, duly serving them, and receiving instruction. You ever gone met with a teacher who you felt you knew more? Hard to receive instruction then. There's a Zen story about a guy who goes to see a Zen master, and so the Zen master has him hold a teacup, and he goes to pour tea into the teacup, and he pours it until it's over full and it's flowing over the sides. And the guy says, "Stop! It's already full. There's no room for more." And the Zen master says, "And that's the way it is with your mind. It's full and not ready for more." Receiving instruction. And teachers so respected reciprocate with compassion. So out of compassion, how about the first one? By training in self-discipline. If you find yourself in the role of a teacher, what's your first duty out of compassion? Is to train in self-discipline yourself. It's not do as I say kind of thing. It's here's my teaching. My teaching is my behavior, my speech. By training in self-discipline, ensuing the teachings are well grasped. So the teacher who's standing in front of you there, or you as a teacher, you're facing the student, you need to be paying attention to see how they learn. My son was doing math education and doing a study in San Diego, and in East San Diego the students could learn algebra, and in La Jolla they could learn algebra, but they didn't learn the same way, and you had to ask different questions and to proceed differently. And his study was about the cultural differences. But here he's saying, ensure the teachings are well grasped. Pay attention to your students. Instructing in every branch of knowledge. And I'm not sure that means teaching astrophysics and molecular biology and Western literature in every branch of knowledge, but instructing the approach to every branch of knowledge. Instructing in the way to engage every branch of knowledge. Introducing their friends and colleagues, and providing safeguards in every direction. That's an interesting one. It's a question that I've worked with for some years as a Dharma teacher. When new students come to me, and I want to give them an instruction that would enable them to recognize the difference between a fruitful path and a dry hole. It's kind of hard to do. It's not always easy to do. So in a teaching setting like this, what a teacher would do would be to set safeguards. So instead of you can't teach them the difference until they've actually noticed, had that experience. So you set up safeguards, precepts, ways to practice, ways to study, things to attend to. And don't just let your students be at recess all the time. In this way, the southern direction is protected and made peaceful and secure. Now the west, which is to your right, in the western direction, this is also particularly stunning, I think, given the time. In 5 ways should a wife, or family member, but wife in this case, as the western direction, be respected by a husband. And that's pretty interesting. I'm not sure. The wives in a lot of these earlier religious traditions were supposed to be the ones doing the respecting, and here the instruction is that to respect the wife, by honoring and not disrespecting, by being faithful, and how about this one, sharing authority. That's pretty 21st century. And by giving gifts. I don't think necessarily this means, Valentine's Day gifts. I think he's talking about a disposition of generosity. So we don't need to take things differently. What is the relationship to the wife or family? And the wife so respected reciprocates with compassion in 5 ways. By being well organized, being kindly disposed to the in-laws, and the household workers, by being faithful, looking after the household goods, and being skillful and diligent in duties. A reciprocal relationship of kindness and responsibility. In this way, the Western direction is protected and made peaceful and secure. The Northern direction is behind us. In 5 ways should friends and colleagues, as the Northern direction, be respected. So this is how one should engage with one's friends and colleagues, with generosity, kind words, acts for their welfare, impartiality. That's pretty incredible. That's the opposite of loyalty. So he's not saying loyalty, impartiality. And, I think that I have seen, I'm trying to think just where, but recently I've seen impartiality as a translation of the word upekkha, the one we usually translate as equanimity. Impartiality, I think, not minding, and being impartial to what comes.
Tony, should we be
Could
able
you scroll down?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm reading off a piece of paper in front of me.
Thanks.
So we're reading here, this section here. Oh no, that section. Impartiality and honesty. That's the way you respect your friends and colleagues, is with honesty. And honesty, does not mean literal truthfulness. I mean, I think I've talked about that. Is it truthful to say the sky is blue? I don't know. There are certainly questions about that. But I think it's the honesty of the heart. And friends and colleagues so respected reciprocate with compassion in 5 ways. By protecting you when you're vulnerable. That's how they respond with compassion. When you're vulnerable, they protect you. As a friend, you protect as well. So this is a reciprocal thing. When you are vulnerable, and likewise your wealth. The next one, just being a refuge when you are afraid. That's I think this was made the province of friends and colleagues, because those relationships, certainly friends, maybe not so much colleagues often, but are those relationships aren't complicated by family kinds of, but refuge when you're afraid. We're all afraid. Not abandoning you in misfortune, and honoring your descendants. Our descendants are who we care about. It's an interesting relationship with friends. In 5 ways should workers and servants, as the lower direction, be respected by an employer. And it's not just an employer. These are, if you're a volunteer leading, creating a pancake breakfast or something, or if you have helpers in the house or servants or gardeners, employees, yes, but anyone that you're supervising. So these are the ways workers and servants in the lower direction, those who you're overseeing, be respected by an employer by allocating work according to aptitude, providing wages and food, looking after the sick. I think he was anticipating health care. Looking after the sick, sharing special treats. I have a friend who's provides lunch to her employees on Fridays. Special treats. And giving reasonable time off work. And workers and servants so respected reciprocate with compassion in 5 ways. So as an employee or as a worker, when you're so respected, you reciprocate with compassion by being willing to start early and finish late when necessary. This isn't a bright line rule. Taking only what is given, doing work well, promoting a good reputation. In this way, the lower direction is protected and made peaceful and secure. In 5 ways should ascetics and Brahmins as the upper direction be respected. Now, in our lives today, actually, there is a Vihara in Placerville, near Placerville. Some of you guys know, and a bunch of nuns live there. So we actually do have a direct relationship with some ascetics. Brahmins, the Buddha said, one is a Brahmin by virtue of character and not by virtue of birth. So he's not talking about Brahmin caste people. But these are people who have committed their lives to the awakening project. And so this is how one should respect them. Kindly actions, kindly speech, kindly thoughts, having an open door, and providing material needs. So he's saying for these people, for the samanas, for the mendicants who come to you or who appear for you, greet them with an open door and provide for material needs. And ascetics and Brahmins so respected reciprocate with compassion in 6 ways. By restraining you from wrongdoing, this is a task of the parents as well. Guiding you to good actions, also action of the parents. Thinking compassionately. One responds to respect with compassion by thinking compassionately, telling you what you ought to know, clarifying what you already know. So that means recognizing what you know and putting it into words so one can contemplate it, or into concepts or into actions, and showing you the path to heaven. So these are all the different ways we need to open up to others in our lives, the ways we need each other. And the worshiping the 6 directions, this is how we worship the 6 directions in our behavior. It's like using the precepts as guides. So this is a way, I think the Buddha would say that if the 6 directions are not being worshipped appropriately, that that happiness won't be present. That the path to happiness depends on this. I love this part of the sutta because it's so concrete. It's so this worldly, and much more granularity than for precepts. So I'm going to unscreen share, and say, well, what do you think? Is it just me, or does that sound pretty cool?